Gaming Nation in the building. Here to speak on a topic called masculinity, manhood, vulnerability, and being authentic. Right. Um, Most of the things on these topics on YouTube. First of all, when you come in, click the like, click the subscribe, click the share, tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your people who you know about your boy. Because I'm pretty soon I'm gonna be the new king on the block. You know what I'm saying? Um, Masculinity and vulnerability. Um, a lot of the topics you go on YouTube or you go on these YouTube streets or on these panels or even in real life when you speak to therapists or you speak in everyday, in just everyday general life, you know, when you talk about masculinity and being vulnerable, it's always how, it's just funny to me how when they speak about masculinity and vulnerability, it's always how it benefits the other person or other people, especially when it comes to women. It's never how it benefits the man himself, right? Um, you know, because part of being a man and being vulnerable is, expressing yourself, not expressing everything about you, not expressing the deepest personal things about you, because not everybody is deserving of every aspect or part of your life. But being vulnerable enough to say what's on your mind honestly, being vulnerable enough to say, what issues you have in life and what problems you have in life, and even to complain about the problem. See, one of these manipulation tactics that I even see the dudes repeat in these spaces, or that the women use on the men, is that real men don't complain. And I hear men say that real men don't complain. Well, that's not necessarily true. And it depends upon the complaint that they're making. If the complaint is a solid complaint, right? And the issue is the complaint a lie or not? Or is it the truth, right? And part of how, like, you even see this with silverback gorillas, you even see this with animals of the male species. When a bear is going into another bear's territory, the bear whose territory that bear is invading, that bear makes noise. That masculine bear makes noise. It complains. It shows that it's dominant. Gorillas do the same thing. Lions do the same thing. Even a king in a castle, right? A king in a castle. Let's go back in medieval times, or say you go to Viking warlords or African chiefs. They complain. When there's something going on in the village, that chief or that king or that warlord, he's going to make noise and complain about it. Hey, what's going on? Hey, why is this civilian right here why you not doing what you're supposed to be doing? You're supposed to be doing A, B, C, and D. So complaining or making an honest critique is part of masculinity and part of being vulnerable, because as a man, you're identifying what's wrong in society, what's the problem, what's being done to you, and you're making a noise about it so that a solution can be done. There can be a solution done about it, right? So, manhood and vulnerability, especially on YouTube, we're going to these panels and you hear women speak about masculinity and being vulnerable. A lot of times we don't really understand what people are asking for, right? Because when women ask men to be vulnerable, you have to look at it. Well, because with women, they're looking at it from, well, the thing with women, right? They may say something on surface level, but they mean something else underneath it, right? Now, when a woman is vulnerable from her aspect, she's in a weak position. So when they ask a man to be vulnerable, they want you to put yourself in a weak position, right? And because, let's take the black community, for example. A lot of our masculinity is based upon what women say, which is wrong, right? So we're going to be vulnerable according to what our women say is vulnerable, and not according to how men are vulnerable. how masculinity and manhood is vulnerable is different from how a woman is vulnerable, right? When a woman is vulnerable, she's in a weak, in like a weak position. Men, when we're vulnerable, we express our thoughts and our opinions and what we're going through, right? Now, you have something I think when you go back to the greatest generation, you go back to the even the Victorian age generation, right? I think what people mix up stoicism with a man not saying anything at all. So even though the men of the Victorian age, the men of the greatest generation, the men of the silent generation were stoic, they still expressed their thoughts and their honest opinions and what they believed in and their ideology. If you look at the great men, like if you go to the Bible, look at Moses, you look at Solomon, you look at even Christ, you look at uh, what's how you say what's that brother that's in India? Like what's that brother's name in India? He's like revered as this prophet in India. I forgot his name. You look at Malcolm X, you look at Martin Luther King. Even though these men were stoic men, they still expressed their thoughts and their opinions, and they were vulnerable about. Look at the black community. Look at black folks. Look at black men. Right during Jim Crow, during slavery, during those times, even though they were tough, stoic men, they still expressed their opinions. They were vulnerable with their thoughts. They're vulnerable with what they believed in. Look at the Nation of Islam. Look at Minister Farrakhan. So I'm saying these are versions of masculinity that back in the day you would say was stoic, but they were very vocal and very vulnerable, and they were not afraid to say what was on their mind and what they were thinking, right? So a lot of times in these YouTube streets or in these spaces, um, when women ask men to be vulnerable, from the woman's point of view, they want men to be in a weak position because they're saying being vulnerable according to what a woman is being vulnerable means vulnerable. And they're not telling the men to be vulnerable as a benefit to the men. Hold on 1 second. All right, back again. So, right, um, right. So, men being vulnerable, masculine to be vulnerable, right? Because masculine is very straightforward, it's very direct, it's very honest. Um, it's very in your face, so you know it's coming, right? So I think society, they're saying men to be vulnerable, to be being vulnerable to benefit other people, especially women. They're not telling men to be vulnerable and express those bottled up emotions to benefit himself, because it's like a pipe bomb or a pipe. If you keep all those emotions bottled up in you, it's going to explode at some point. So as a man, you have to express what's on your brain. You have to express what's on your mind. You have to talk about what you're going through. Not talk about everything. Not talk about your personal stuff. You don't have to talk about everything. You don't have to talk about personal things that happen to you. But get some things off your chest. If not, in like a YouTube live like this, if it's too personal, you get a therapist you talk that to, or somebody you can trust to. But um, just to and I think what society has, and I think this messed up with maybe the boomers, the boomer men, is that men didn't say or complain about things in society before. So if you hear about those men who are the happy life, happy wife, and they always put men in this. I don't want to call it a trick bag. I don't want to call it a trap, because if men are not building society, if men are not being responsible, if men are not, making sure that the houses are built, making sure that there's, you know, Just a military is needed, not making sure that laws are passed properly. If there's no police officers, if there's no buildings to be built, if there's no bridges to be bridged, if there's no trucks to drive, things that everything in our society that men need to be doing or be responsible for. If men are not doing these things, society's going to fall, undoubtedly. So, but what they trick men into doing is doing these things, or they train men to do things for a society that's not appreciative of masculinity or manhood of what is done. And they've trained the men to accept an ungrateful society. That's the issue. So now that the men are speaking out about being unappreciated in society that men built, being unappreciated in a relationship or in a household, where if we talk about man being the second hand in command to God, and we talk about how a woman is a helpmate to a man, well, then if a man is going through certain things in his life, that woman is supposed to be a helpmate to help him progress, not be a thorn in his side to help him regress, right? So, you know, men being vulnerable, you're being honest about what you feel, and you're being honest about the things you're going through. Now, when you're amongst men, now, right? Because steel sharpens steel, iron sharpens iron, right? Other men are going to give you that hardcore truth to help men find that solution, right? You find your solutions for you. So we as men, we have to understand that things that when we're in a room full of men or other men who've been through things and who are experienced, they're gonna give us that hardcore feedback, which is what we need to grow, right? But you must be first vulnerable with yourself as men. You gotta look yourself in the mirror and say, what do I need in my life to be better for myself first? If you're insecure about your height, there's really nothing you could do about your height. But you could probably do something about upgrading your appearance. Maybe, getting the shape up, maybe skincare. Maybe you could go to the gym and work out if some of you are insecure about fighting. Because the thing with being with insecurities is there's nothing wrong with the insecurities about what you're feeling about yourself. But as a man, you got to find a solution, because there are insecurities that you can control and there's insecurities that you can't control. Like height, you can't control your height. You can't control if you're only going to be 5'1". You can't control if you're only going to be 5'10". You can't control if you're going to be above 6 feet. But what you can control is your appearance and how you feel about yourself, right? If you're insecure about how to ride a bike, or you have fear, maybe you need to take some speech classes or public speaking classes to get rid of that social anxiety. If you have, if you're insecure about your weight, there's plenty of YouTube videos online that you can watch where they do HIIT, where you can work out in your room. You don't have to go to a gym or anything public. You can do something private at home. Um, um, if you're insecure about your health, you go to a doctor, you get your checkup done to see what's wrong with you, so you can find out a way how to find out a solution for yourself as a man to take care of whatever health issues you're going through. Now, the insecurities you can't control is the insecurities of everybody else, right? You can't control the insecurities of a woman. You can't control the insecurities of other people, right? Hold on 1 second. Come on, Baba. I have a little kitten here. I haven't given him a name yet. I have a little kitten here. He fell. Look at him. Look at him. He's yelling. What's up, Baba? Look at him. Right there. Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. Little kitten. He fell a while ago, so I had to get him. I have to wipe his eyes and his face because he got mucus around it. But anyway, right? So you have to be very careful about, who you're vulnerable with as a man. The level of your vulnerability and what you show the world with your vulnerability. Not everybody deserves a man's vulnerability, and in my opinion, in general, in when you're operating in everyday life, um, there are certain things about you not everybody should know, right? Because what women don't understand is because women are able to be vulnerable in a safe world. Like Vito Corleone told his son Michael Corleone, women and children can be careless, men cannot. And because the reason why men cannot be careless is because we live in a very dangerous world. So when I say men being vulnerable and authentic, you don't be vulnerable with everybody in public. You can be vulnerable with people you trust. You can be vulnerable as far as, like I said, being honest about what you are and what you're about, but not everything, not your deepest personal secrets, right? You don't want to reveal everything about you. You want to keep certain things you want to keep certain things to yourself, right? Um, but what I don't appreciate that I see on YouTube a lot in real life is that the women use a man's vulnerability as a weapon against them. And then when we tell these women that, um, they like to play pretend as if they don't know what we're speaking about, or they like to say, "Well, you picked the wrong woman." Well, there's a big pool of wrong women to pick from. Well, that keeps happening. And then the men on the panel say, "Oh, it's your fault because you picked a chick you couldn't be vulnerable with," or blah 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 blah. It's really not the man's fault because he didn't pick a woman to do that stuff to him. He picked a woman that, you know, he picked a woman that chose him. You know what I'm saying? So if he picked a woman that chose him, and she's supposed to be, his helpmate, then she's supposed to help him with his vulnerability. She shouldn't be taking his vulnerabilities and using it against him. But you know, I don't want to make this about women. I want this to make this about manhood and masculinity, right? And being vulnerable. So, um, as men, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be insecure about certain things. But the thing with your insecurities, nobody's responsible for finding solutions for your insecurities. You are, right? Um, it's okay to be insecure about a woman cheating on you, but there's nothing you can really do about that insecurity but walk away from that situation and or just not deal with that person. Like I said, another person's insecurities is not your responsibility, right? And if a person doesn't want to respect your boundaries or want to respect what you're insecure about, just don't deal with that person. That's a lot. That's common logic. Now, there's some insecurities about y'all that y'all go overboard with, like that you really have no outside of yourself that you don't have control over. You don't have control over if somebody's gonna like you or not. You don't have control over if somebody's gonna reject you or not. That's just a part of life. You go to a job, you go to several job interviews, 7 of them are gonna reject you. That's just part of life. You can't control how other people are gonna respond to you, right? So as men, you have to take that into consideration. Give me 1 second. Uh, I gotta put my phone on charge. Give me 1 second. Oh. Oh. Right. All right, and I'm back in the game. And I'm back in the game, right? So, nah, I'm gonna be vulnerable about something, um, about myself, right? Um, I say around 16, 15 years ago, I caught a heart disease called cardiomyopathy, which is where your heart is enlarged. You get a weak heart. Now, that messed me up in the game because at the time I wanted to play football. I wanted to be a firefighter. I wanted to do things that were what you call physical. I wanted to be, that I always envisioned myself as being the hero character or the man that's a hero, right? What inspired me to be a firefighter was, I think this was kindergarten or pre-K. We went on a class school trip to a firefighter house, and I just enjoyed, because they had put me in this fire truck, and I wanted to press the buttons, and I pressed the buttons, and it was fun to me, and I was really interested in doing that. So before I wanted to become a firefighter, I wanted to be a scientist because I used to watch National Geographics and how they used to, no, National Geographics, they be, doing documentaries about the animals. I wanted to do that. And then what inspired me more to be a firefighter and join the military was 9/11. And during 9/11, there was this guy, black brother, and when the Twin Towers happened, he dressed up in his Marine fatigues. And what's going on, Anthony Timmons? He dressed up in his military fatigues. And at that moment, I said, okay, that's what I wanted to do and be. Fast forward, I was 16. I caught something called cardiomyopathy. So I couldn't do that anymore. And that messed me up in the game because that's what I planned to do with my life. And I couldn't do that anymore. So for a long time, I was depressed. I didn't really, I didn't really want to go to college because college wasn't my thing. That wasn't, my dream thing to go to college. You know what I'm saying? And during that period, I was very depressed and I was in a weakened state. And the worst part for a man in that position is that you can't really do for yourself. You have to really rely on other people. And I think for a man's independence or his masculinity, he has to go out there and find out things on himself. He has to go through his rites of passage as a man, right? And that incident, it kind of took that away from me because I was very vulnerable in the context of where I had to rely on people. I had to accept certain levels of treatment and disrespect because I was helpless at that moment. I had to rely on and that forced me to make decisions that if I didn't have a heart issue and I was able to take care of myself, I wouldn't need certain things or people around me at that time. But because of the heart condition, I had to rely on people. Like, for example, because of the heart condition, I couldn't really work a regular job, right? So I had to go through, what you call those, say, for example, Vested or, for example, America Works. Job organizations that help disabled people, help them find jobs. I have to go through those things instead of doing it myself. And I had to sign up for Social Security, which I didn't want to do, right? Because in the Black community, when people sign up for SSI, it traps them because you rely on the government. I didn't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I had to do that to be able to get access to America for Works or for Vested or, one of those things that help disabled people find a job. And I didn't like the idea of looking at myself as disabled because I looked at that as a weakness, right? And then, the people around me, except for two people, my brother and my sister, who had my back and was in my corner. No. And I made decisions that if I was healthier, I didn't have a heart issue, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have made those decisions. If I was able to if I was able to work and make my own money, well, first of all, if I didn't have the heart condition, I would have went to join the military and then I would have became a firefighter. But because I had the heart condition, I had to rely on other people. You know what I'm saying? When I was doing martial arts, because I lost enough weight and I got healthy to a point where I could at least do martial arts, right? When I was doing that, somebody, a parent of mine who promised to pay for the school or promised to pay the way through martial arts, stopped paying it because me and that parent, my father had a disagreement. You know what I'm saying? He wanted me to do something. I didn't want to do that thing. So he stopped paying for my martial arts. So then the sensei ended up having to pay for me, right? had to put money on it for me. And, the sensei was kind of using that, or me going there for free, or, over my head as a control thing for me. And one of my biggest things about me is like, I don't like people controlling me. I don't like people having a thing over me where you can use to manipulate me around. I don't like that. So I put myself in that situation because I really didn't have no other option. Or at the time, I didn't believe I had another option. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I think as a man, when you are on that level of vulnerability where you can't really take care of yourself and you got to rely on other people, you have no other option or choice, it becomes a bad situation because now you put yourself or your life in other people's hands. You know what I'm saying? Which, well, the thing with having a disability now is that there's a lot of information because this happened to me back in 2008, 2006, no, 2008. I was in high school. I was playing football at the time too. I was in high school, right? So at the time, there wasn't too much information about. I don't even think at the time it was easy for disabled people to get work at the time. So yeah. So for me, dealing with that heart condition, still dealing with the heart condition, it put me in a lot of vulnerable situations, and it made me make a lot of choices that I would not have made, or I would have to deal with things that I wouldn't have to deal with today if I didn't have that issue. And I ain't gonna lie, I regret it. I really do regret it because people, because now when you have to ask people for help, and then those same people who give you help use that help to disrespect you, or use that help to kind of control you or whatever, and you say something back to them about it, they're always going to use that time they helped you with something that they helped you. And that it kind of pisses me off because the only reason why I asked you for help is because I had no other option. And for a lot of men out there, I know that's a terrible situation you're in. I was in that situation, and I'm still in that situation, that kind of situation. And what you have to do is that you have to do what you have to do to kind of grind yourself out that situation. Like what I had to do, I had to use one of one of the programs that helps me find work. I have to use America for Works, and they help me find a job, and I have to now use that job to grind myself out the position and get myself into a better situation where I don't have to deal with people that are going to use them helping me as a way to control me or as something over my head. That's one of the things I do not like and I hate. I always hated this, is that people using something to control, like a leash to control you. And as a man, you should never put yourself in that situation. Why? Because as men, or as men, or in your masculinity, you should never allow people to dictate how you move. Right? No, it's okay to respond things. Now, let me clarify that. Right? When I say dictate how you move, right? Because there's a difference between you take it, you see something bad happen to you, or you see something you don't like, and because of critical thinking and comprehensive thought, you say, okay, I'm not going to go that direction. You know what I'm saying? You're seeing a danger or something happened to you, and you're adjusting and you're making the adjustments, and you move in a different way. When I say dictate your how you move, I'm saying somebody has the absolute control over your head on how you move, on what to say and what to do. That's something different from you saying to yourself, okay, I see how this happened. I'm not going to do that. Or I'm going to adjust myself and do something different. Because at that point, you're seeing an issue or you're seeing a bad problem, and you are taking it upon yourself to move in a different direction, as opposed to somebody, you know, moving you in that direction or dictating where you go. So that's the difference between that. So you don't want people to have that much control over your life, or that much control over your head, where now you can't go and come as you please. No diddy. No diddy. Um, you know, and you don't want to put yourself in that position. That type of vulnerability you don't want in that context. You don't want to be vulnerable enough where you can't fight back, or you can't do for yourself, or you can't, um, have control over your life, or people have control over you. That's not really good in your masculinity, right? Um, it's not healthy, because there's going to be something in you that's going to say, I want to be free from this, and I want to be independent of this, which is what I felt and what I went through. And you don't want to put yourself in that situation. So if I was to go back to the younger me when I was 16, first of all, the younger me, I would tell him to be a lot more healthier. And the younger me, I would say, because at the time I was really stubborn too. Like I didn't want to come to grips with that I had an issue or a heart issue, and that the only way out of that issue is to, you know, take what was available to me in my environment, which was to, you know, go to programs like I was talking about earlier that would have helped disabled people find work. Well, what the mistake I made, which again, as I was talking about control, right? The mistake I made was going to college. That was my mistake personally at that time. Because at the time I was not healthy in my mind, and I wasn't healthy in my body. Because at the time with the heart issue, I was still overweight. I was obese. I was close to 400 pounds. And I was still recovering from the heart issue mentally, and I was not ready to take on college. I was forced to go to college because of my mother, right? And I just was not ready to take that on at the time, right? So that was the mistake I made. The right thing to do at that time was, to get healthy, at least get some type of job where I could have money in my pocket, get healthy, get my mind healthy, lose the weight at the time, and then go to college. That was the proper way to do that, right? So what I would tell to somebody that's going through that situation, if you're going through a health situation and you don't really have any solid help around you, don't take on things that is going to further stress you, or take on some kind of project that your body and your mind is not, healthy to make, especially if you don't have no help around you. Because I didn't have solid help around me at the time. Like, so you don't want to do that. You want to whatever help. Well, first of all, you have to come to grips that you do have a health issue. You have to accept that, and you have to look at it and say, okay, certain things I can't do right now at the moment, but there's still something I can do at the moment, right? You have to say that with yourself, right? And then now you have to make the step and say, okay, what can I do? And then you focus on the thing you can do, and in that moment, work on getting your health right and your mind right. But don't take on things too big that you know at the time you cannot handle. The problem with me at the time was that, you know, I didn't really have people or parents in my corner that was thinking about me and my best interests. They were thinking about themselves and their best interests. Like, my father wanted me to go to college so he can celebrate and show me off to people. My mother wanted me to go to college so that so that I can support her and give her money. Not for me and myself or how I felt. You know what I'm saying? The reasoning for them wanting me to go to college wasn't for me. It was for them. You know what I'm saying? So, it sucks that at that moment in time, as a kid, that you have to rely on your parents for guidance, wisdom, and instruction, and they lead you down a bad path, or they lead you into something that's not the best interest of you. You know what I'm saying? So, that's to the parents out there too. Like, I'm not the one to believe in being entitled. I believe you got to work and earn your way and earn your weight. And, I do respect my parents for what they've done, but I also have to critique the bad things they have done too. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to my mother, especially when it comes to my pops. You know what I'm saying? That's like, again, I said I appreciate them for what they have done, but they've done some effed up things to me too. I'm not gonna say on the loud. So that's what I mean when I say you don't be vulnerable by everything, right? Um, Yeah, so I would tell a young kid, you got to come to grips with whatever issue you're going through, so you can get through that issue. Now, lucky for me, the heart issue that I have, I can always do cardio. I can still do some level of working out, and I didn't lose the weight. I lost like 200 pounds. I used to be 400 pounds. I lost 200 pounds, right? And I lost that in like 9 months. Not 9 months. Yeah, like I think I lost the first 150 in 9 months. I lost the next 50 in 4 months after that, right? So yeah. So for those of you coming in, click the like, click the share me out, subscribe, donate if you can. Um, but yeah, so for me and how I deal with that now is I try to push forward the best way I can. Like for now, I make sure I eat properly, I work out properly, I make sure I do the things to keep my health right, and my health in the right place. I still go to the doctor and check up. Oh, one thing I gotta say to y'all, right? Um, that I see on YouTube. There's a lot of health gurus out there, right? That will tell you, which I don't disagree with it. I don't disagree with you going, eating healthy. I don't disagree with you taking like, how I tell you how to detox. You got to eat, certain amount of vegetables. You know how they do the whole green juice and thing. I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, you got to combine that with going to your doctor and getting checked up, so that you know what's wrong with you, so that you know how to take your proper steps. Like you can check your heart, your blood pressure, you can check your heart rate, you check your you have to check your you have to take your blood type to see what type of food you can eat and cannot eat. You still need to go to your doctor and get checked up, so you know that what's wrong, so you know what's wrong with you, and at the same time combine that with the healthy eating, yaki awakening, right? You have to take the things you see on YouTube, like in the context of health and healthy eating, and still combine that with going to the doctor, right? Um, so that's the mistake that I made. One of the mistakes that I made was that at the time I had stopped going to the doctor, and what I did was I would solely rely on eating healthy green foods, which is nothing wrong with that. The mistake in that was that if I had went to the doctor to get my blood pressure checked, to get my heart checked, to get all these things checked, I could have known um, how to better eat and how to better go about what I was doing, right? So you have to combine the naturopath stuff with the modern stuff at the same time, right? So, so masculinity and vulnerability and being authentic with yourself as a man, right? You have to do that with yourself first before you do that with the world. And you being authentic and vulnerable to a level, it's gonna let you know how people respond to you. It's gonna let you know how people feel about you. Now, if you don't like that response, as a man, you can speak up and say something about it. Always speak up and say something that's being done wrong to you. Don't just sit there and take it and don't say anything about it. That's part of masculinity too, right? You have to say things that you don't like and you dislike, and in certain cases, you have to be ready to fight for what you believe in, or fight or defend yourself, right? So never sit there and be complacent, because that's the issue with relationships right now, right? Is that a lot of men from the boomer era that was on that happy wife, happy life situation, they didn't speak up in their household and they became a whole simp. This was creating a lot of the problems today. Hold on. All right, back to you. So, yeah, you know, so yeah, being authentic as a man, what that does is that it allows you to know where everybody is with you. You know what I'm saying? Um, you know, how when people say people wear their heart on their sleeves, or they wear who they are on their sleeves or on the outside, that lets people know, that lets you know how people feel about you. And that way you can make your adjustments, and you can move differently. You know what I'm saying? Or you can make the proper response. Hey, go my cat. Siamese cat. All right, he in the backyard. I'm making noise. So yeah, being vulnerable. Being now, when I say being vulnerable, you don't be all the way vulnerable as I've been saying. You know what I'm saying? You give it little by little in dosage. Hold on. Hush. Rogue, come here. Rogue. Oh, what's up? I gotta give you another bat. All right, so yeah, you don't be vulnerable all the way to an extent. You give, in the context of, like, say you're on a date, or the context with certain people. If you don't know who that person is, you don't be vulnerable all the way, right? You don't be vulnerable in public with society. You know what I'm saying? Because then again, not everybody deserves a man's vulnerability, right? They gotta earn that stuff, and I think that's what's wrong with society today. Society has not earned the men's trust. They have not earned the men's vulnerability, especially in a society that men built, right? Um, right, especially in the society that men have built. That same society has spit back in the faces of men and have been unappreciative. I don't know how to say that word properly. Hope I said that word right. Of those men that help define society and shape the society we're in, right? So society, if you want your men to be vulnerable with you, and women, if you want your men to be vulnerable with you, y'all have to learn to earn that from them. You don't just get that from that. And then you shouldn't just show that up front. You can be honest about your intentions. You can be vulnerable and honest about what you're looking for. You can be vulnerable and honest about, you know, certain things you're feeling, but you don't be vulnerable all the way about everything, right? Um, um, no, in the context of black men in these spaces, right? I think our community have been used to black men not complaining about certain issues, or not complaining about, or being, well, first of all, when it comes to black men complaining about the government, complaining about the mistreatment of the government towards black men, nobody says we're complaining. It's when we talk about the issues of getting the women right, they say we complain, right? Right. So when it comes to women, a man in his house has a right, or a black man in his house has a right to complain about the things he see the women doing wrong. He has that right, right? So he has a right to be vulnerable to a level to say, yo, honestly, I don't like how my women are behaving. I don't like how you other dudes are behaving. That's wrong. And he has a right to say that. So don't let anybody tell you you're wrong for complaining about the things in your society, right? The only thing about the complaint is you have to, now see, here's the other thing, right? People believe that because as a man you're not going through the issues yourself, you can't speak on those issues. You can speak on your issues in your community, because what? You still have to live in that community, or you still have to live amongst those people. You're going to have businesses in that community. You're going to have children in that community. So as a man, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for what, for who, for the what, who, what, where, and why that comes after you. That's why you're speaking out. You're not speaking out for today's problems. You're speaking out so there's no problem in the future or tomorrow, right? So as men, you have to be confident and be vulnerable with your thoughts and what you're thinking in a clear, concise, logical, reasonable way to fix the problems that are in your society. In that context, right? Don't be afraid to say, honestly, I don't like that, or honestly, I'm not interested. Like in one context, right? Like say if you're a brother, or say you're any race or nationality of man, and you say, hey, I'm not interested in a woman that's a 3 or 4. I'm not interested in a woman that's engaging in certain levels of debauchery. Society's going to tell that man he insecure. So I'm insecure because I don't want something in my life. You know what I'm saying? And as a man, you are free to accept or not allow or not accept things in your life. You don't have to accept certain things, certain people's ideologies. You don't have to accept what other people think. You can say you're not interested. Don't ever let somebody use manipulation tactics to manipulate something in your life you do not want. And that's part of being manhood and masculinity. That's part of being vulnerable. Being vulnerable enough to say, yo, I don't want that. You know what I'm saying? And what bothers me is that you see the other men on YouTube using the same female manipulation tactics to manipulate the men or play on the man's ego to accept certain things or certain behavior from the women. Which is, in my opinion, that's a bitch ass nigga to me. Is that a man is going to use female manipulation tactics to manipulate other men into accepting something or bad behavior from the women. Because I see the men on here too. Instead of those men who, like for example, right? My thing is, I have no issue with the players and the pimps and the max on YouTube, because every man you're entitled to um, push your influence or push what you believe in. And instead of those men saying, well, honestly, we like hoes and we like sluts and this is what we like and we're secured in this way. But if another man doesn't like that, he has a right to say he doesn't like that or he's not interested. But no, with the men on YouTube, especially in the black sector of YouTube with black men, they'll tell a traditional guy, or say he's, even if he's not traditional, but he still has those value systems, those traditional value systems, right? The guys who like and hoes or 3 or 4s, they'll tell the guys who are traditional that you're insecure because you won't accept a hoe in your life or 3 or 4 in your life. But if that traditional guy picks that 3 or 4, they'll blame that guy for picking the 3 or 4 that they just manipulated him into accepting. That's not right. Any man that's going to use manipulation tactics, you're a bitch ass nigga. Or use female manipulation tactics to manipulate other men to believe or to accept what you want them to accept, you're a bitch ass nigga. Because an honest man is gonna say, okay, well, if you don't want this or you don't want to accept certain things, I'm gonna leave you alone. That's what masculinity is, right? I'm not this ideology on you. I'm going to explain the case and why you want this. But if you don't believe it, to accept it, I'm not gonna sit here and manipulate you and say you're. This is what the issue we have with religion, ideology on people. That's not how that works, right? So I think when it comes to masculinity, I think you're a bitch ass nigga or ninja if female manipulation tactic or play with a man's ego to get those men to accept something that they don't want. And what the issue in society is because a lot of these young boys, they never had any proper masculine reference points. They never had that masculine manhood training in their life. They're fragile in their thoughts and their thinking. They're weak in their thoughts and their thinking. So whatever influence of man that's there, whether it's proper or improper, they're gonna follow it, right? And that's the issue we're having, right? If a man is vulnerable and honest and saying, listen, I don't want a woman that's a 3 or 4. I don't want a woman that's engaging in certain things or certain aspects of life. He has a right to say that. Now, fellas, I gotta say this to y'all, right? If you want something out of somebody else, you have to first be the example with yourself. You cannot be 3 or 4 mongering and then say you don't want a 3 or 4. Now, here's the thing with that, right? Um, the problem with women is that you don't know who's a 3 or 4 or not. That's the issue. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that we as men, we cannot control again. You cannot control if a woman is going to be a 3 or 4 or not. You can't control if she's going to lie to you about being a 3 or 4 or not. The only thing you can do is your due diligence and vet that person properly. And when you find out that she's a 3 or 4, you just let her go. But what the problems that women have, and the problems that the things that women choose to get themselves into, it's not you men's individual fault. Because if she chooses to engage herself with, again, I don't have an issue with players or max, but if she chooses to engage herself with men in that lifestyle, and you're not a man that's involved in that lifestyle, that's not your fault. Because she chose to engage in it. Because that's what she wanted to do. It's not even those players or those max fault. Because with a player or mac, with them, they're honest about how they live in their lifestyle. They're not lying to these women about how they live it. So that woman chooses to be with those kind of guys, that's her fault at the end of the day. So in general, to you men that believe that it's always a man's fault, nah, I don't. That's not my position. My position is that it's only a man's fault for the things that he's doing and the things that's within his control. And you can't control everybody else. You can't control how people are going to respond to you. But what you could do is if how they're responding to you is something you don't like, what you could do is either get away from that person, remove yourself from that situation, and find a solution so that if that response is coming to you again, how you can deal with that, how you can deal with that person, place, or thing. But you can't control how something is going to respond to you. You know what I'm saying? You only can control how you're going to respond. You know what I'm saying? The only thing you can do with people, with somebody else, well, I think I said it. The only thing you can do with other people's responses to you is, like I said, get away from that person or tell them, put up a bone and say, hey, I don't like how you responded. Hey, I don't like that. Or don't bring that energy to me. Get away from me. That's the only thing you can do. Right? But yeah, but don't be afraid to express your thoughts and your opinions and what you feel like. Don't be afraid of doing that. But with men, you have to explain it in a logical, concise, clear, and very intelligent way. Because a lot of things I see on YouTube is that they'll have a talking point, but it's explained very stupidly. They're very ridiculous. It's not in an intelligent, logical manner. It's all over the place, right? So I have to do that with myself. I have to make sure that whatever talking points I have, I give it a logical premise, right? Now, so for example, you have a lot of black pillars out there that they're saying that if you're not tall enough, you're not skinny enough, or you don't have certain facial features enough, that you're not going to have certain success out here in the dating world, which some of it is true. The thing is that when you're someone that's outside of your dating, like for me, for example, I'm from New York City, and a lot of the guys in the black spill space, they like to say that if you're certain height or you're short, you're not going to be able to have access to women. Well, I know a lot of Jamaican Caribbean cats. I know a lot of Black American cats who are short in real life that take care of themselves, smell good, work on their appearance, and they have access to women. Right? So, which is manhood, right? Manhood is saying, okay, cool. I have these certain, like I said, I had these certain things about myself. But what could I do to improve on what I already have to get the best possible outcome? Right? Look at Marcus Garvey. He was short, but look how powerful and influential he was. Look at Napoleon Dynamite. Look at what's his name? Napoleon Dynamite. I forgot how you say his name. He was short, but he damn near conquered a lot. He damn near conquered the world. You see what I'm saying? So, which is masculinity and manhood, right? So, I think the issue is that in societies that um, we allow the thoughts and opinions of women to affect a man's masculinity, especially here in the Black community, which is wrong, right? Now, I don't mind a woman having these preferences. She should allow to be have her preferences. Any woman should a woman deal with something she doesn't want to deal with, right? But at the same time, we as society, we cannot put what her preferences is on the men, right? We can't we cannot weaponize what a woman's preferences are, what her boundaries are. We cannot weaponize that and use that as a manipulation tactic to manipulate the men and make that affect a man's identity or make that man feel bad about himself. We cannot do that in society. You know what I'm saying? And the men are allowed to have their preferences too. And a man should not deal with a chick that doesn't meet his preferences or his standards or his priorities and these things and such. I don't know. I don't know how society says we're equal, but when it comes to a man not wanting to deal with something about a woman, it's wrong. Because we would never tell a woman that she should deal with something she doesn't want to deal with. That wouldn't be fair. In a society that we're saying that we're supposed to be equal and balanced, well, it's very unbalanced on the man's side. And given the fact that, men have built the society we're in. The Black men who came before me, they fought for the rights for me to be free here, and they fought for the rights for the women to be free, or for Black women to be free. So that's always been something I've seen in our society for a long time, that we claim we want to be equal, but when it comes to manhood and masculinity and being fair for men, we don't want to be fair for the men. We don't want to be fair and balanced for the men. If a man says, "Yo, I expect my woman to be A, B, C, and D," we'll tell that man, "Well, no, you can't get that." Or we'll tell Black men, "No, you can't get a woman that's A, B, and C." But if a woman says she expects her man to be A, B, and C, he has to be A, B, and C, or she won't deal with him. That's insane. I don't know how we expect a society to function like that. Or I don't know how we keep saying that, as men, you're the leaders of the house or you're the head of the community, but you're not meeting up to the head of the community's expectations, right? But the head must meet the expectations of the community. I don't know how that makes sense. Like you can't go to a job and tell the job, or you can't go to Shake Shack and tell Shake Shack, well, you know what I'm saying, you got to meet the requirement of the employee or the person trying to get the job. No, Shake Shack going to tell the employee, hey, you got to meet the criteria of Shake Shack. And if you don't like how Shake Shack is operating their business, then just don't work here. Simple as that. We're in a society where we're saying we're equal, but at the same time, you want the men to be heads of the house or the leaders or the leader position. We're in a society that says we're equal, but a man's expectation is not to be met or cared about, but we must meet the expectations of a woman. We're in a society that says we're equal, but a man must help a woman do something, but a woman who's designed to be a helpmate to a man, she can't help him do anything, or we can't expect a woman to be helpful to that man in any way. Like one of the talking points I've heard on YouTube is that a woman should not care about how a man is struggling or the problems that a man are going through. So if that's the case, what the fuck is the purpose of a woman and why she's here? Why did God make this woman? Did God not make a woman to be a man's helpmate? And to you women, y'all love to get on YouTube, and this is me being vulnerable and honest right now. Women, y'all like to get up on YouTube and say that, the type of value. What's going on, Nino? Click the like, click the share, click the subscribe button. Tell your mama, tell your friend. The new king is here, right? Women, y'all love to get on YouTube and you like to talk about the type of value and inspiration and motivation you can bring to a man, right? But which is what y'all supposed to do. Y'all supposed to be a helpmate to a dude, right? But when we expect y'all to do something, or we expect y'all to care about how a man is struggling or what a man is going through, you don't want to do it. And then the men I see on YouTube, they accept it. I've heard men say that. I heard men say that a woman should not care or give a damn about what a man is struggling to go through. But that's in conflict with her being a helpmate or her being of value to a man. And that's the issue that I have with society today. Masculinity and manhood benefits society and the women that are in it, and we're held to that standard or criteria, but we don't hold the women to that standard or criteria. Who the fuck is making these rules? Who's creating these rules? Who's creating these space? What man in politics or what man above me or better than me is setting these rules and allowing these rules and accepting these rules? And then now, when it comes to men like me on the micro level in regular day life, I gotta deal with that mumbo jumbo or crisscross up and down, right? Where the men are held to a criteria to take care of society, but the women are not held to the criteria to take care of that men in those society. But they're supposed to be helpmate, and they're supposed to bring this type of value to the men. And you niggas online accept it. Black men in society, in the black community, accept that. And y'all accept that for 60 years. And every time a man get up on YouTube, he makes a complaint about this, which that's what a man is. That's part of masculinity and leadership. Masculinity complains, leadership assigns blame to. Right? I have no issue with stepping up my game for not only myself, most importantly, but to step my game up for the women in my society or the women in my area or the women who are attached to me. I have no issue with that. But the issue that I have is that y'all allow the women to not hold themselves accountable to the men and to step up their game to them for the men. That's the issue I have. See what I'm saying? I don't know why y'all accept that. I don't know why do black men in the black community accept that bullshit. I don't know why men in general accept that bullshit. Why do men in general accept women not being appreciative to you and what your contribution to this society that they benefit from? I don't understand that. Right. And see, this right here, this me being right here is me being vulnerable about my thoughts and my thinkings and my questions, because these questions need to be answered. And what a lot of men on YouTube do, they think for themselves here and now in the moment. They don't think what's going to come after them 10 years down the line. You understand what I'm saying? I can't stand that hubris. Yeah, at the same time, I focus on myself here and now in the moment. But as men, as leaders, as visionaries, we got to think about what we're doing today that's going to affect us 10 years down the line. But because a lot of these men on YouTube, they're so my fault, my hand is shaking. They're so what you call pleased by the pleasures of the flesh, fornication, sex, food, whatever their vices are. They're willing to live here and the now, let it burn here and the now, and not give a fuck about where we're going in the future. All right. And that's my issue that I have with, going back to something I said earlier, that I have with the guys who are players and max or pimps, right? If y'all claim to respect and adhere to the rules of the game, why do you dirty Mac on the traditional guys, right? If you, I would, if you're free to push your influences, don't block the other man's influences. And if you're gonna say, well, the traditional guys, they like to play and hate, and they like to bang on or shame players or any of that stuff, well, we're in a traditional society, right? Built by traditional men in a house that's traditional. So in a house built by traditional men, in a house that is successful because of those traditional principles and core values, the traditional men have a right in their house to shame any man or woman that's not moving in the direction of that house or where that man wants to take that house. See what I'm saying? And I think what the players and the Max have done is that they're taking female manipulation and to manipulate themselves out of taking accountability and manipulate themselves out of taking manipulate themselves out of not going with what society was supposed to be going, which is off of traditional masculinity, traditional manhood, traditionalism. So that's what the players have done, right? The players and the Max, they have used female manipulation to manipulate themselves out of being ashamed or held accountable for not following the house of traditional men. That's how they do it. See what I'm saying? And even though I do believe that women respond to men, I believe women choose to respond to I believe women choose to respond, right? They can choose to respond because she has free will. So as long as she has free will and choice, she can choose how she responds, right? And depending on that woman's ideology, her perception, her mindset, she's going to make a response based upon her perception, her reality, and her mindset. And she's going to respond to herself first before she responds to somebody else. Because as a man, I have to respond to my mentality too before I take leadership. I have to think to myself, who am I, what I am, and what I want to do, and then make a response or decision off of that, of my perception. So that's what women do. They respond to a guy based upon their perception of reality, their thoughts and their opinions, and what they believe in. That's how women respond. And based off of that, they're going to choose to respond to what they respond to. So if the women are saying, okay, I want to do a hot girl summer, or okay, 3 or 4 phase, they're going to respond to the guys that believe in 3 or 4 phase. And for the guys who are traditional now, they're not going to respond too well to the guys who are traditional. They might try to manipulate their way to that. That's another thing. Women can respond by honestly following that man, or they can respond by manipulating. So you can't control how a woman is going to respond to you. She's going to respond how she chooses to respond. Right? So, right. So if a woman's mindset is new age alternative lifestyle, she's only going to find, or she's only going to respond to the guys who believe in that ideology. She's not going to respond to the guys who are traditional. She's going to look at the guys who are traditional as unattractive, right? This is why I don't like when people on YouTube say, well, if you move as a man, if you move this way, or you say certain things like this, it's going to be attractive or unattractive according to that woman. When we know that every woman is not objective. For the most part, women are very subjective. So each woman is going to move differently. So a woman is going to find a traditional guy based upon her mentality and mindset more attractive than the player, the pimp, or the Mac. Or same goes for the woman that believes in player, that believes in 3 or 4ism, that believes in alternative lifestyle. She's not going to find a traditional guy attractive based upon her brain and her mentality. She's not going to be in synergy or compatible with those guys, with the traditional guys. Because the traditional guy, his mindset is he's more strict, He's more disciplined. He's not going to allow his woman to do certain things. He's not going to allow himself to do certain things. So this goes back to insecurities, right? Insecurity on a level is subjective according to that guy. So if a guy is traditional, he's not going to be secure with a woman that's not traditional. But a guy who's a player or a Mac, or he's into the sex culture, he's going to be more secure with a 3 or 4 than a guy that's traditional because of his mentality, his perception, and his mindset. So it ties that back into a woman's perception. Because a woman's perception, she's only going to find the player or the pimp attractive because she's into 3 or 4ism. But if it's a chick that's traditional at her core and her mindset, she's not going to find that guy attractive. She's going to find the guy whose mindset is also traditional like hers. Right? And this is why I don't like when we like to say, well, if you say certain things or you say certain things like this, it's going to make this chick not attracted to you, or it's going to make her attracted to you. Which, when it comes to manhood and masculinity, you're going to say and do things that certain people are going to like and certain people are not going to like. That's leadership. Go watch The Godfather, right? In Godfather, Michael Corleone and Vito Corleone, they made decisions and they gave instructions that their foot soldiers did not like. But the foot soldiers, regardless if they liked it or not, they had to follow it, right? So you have to take that stuff into consideration when you're dealing with people in general. That's not just for women. That's for people in general. People in general, once you're a man in that leadership position, or if you're not, even if you're just a man, you're gonna say and do things that people are not gonna like, and then people are going to like. So I'm saying, so you cannot live your life afraid to say what you're gonna say because people aren't gonna like you. That's gonna be in general. Or you can't go on a date and say something or not say something or tell her what you're going to say because you're afraid if this woman's going to like you or not, or she's going to find you unattractive or not. Because all that shit is subjective. You know what I'm saying? And as a man, you're going to say something that woman's not going to like. You see what I'm saying? And really, that's on her because she's the one that has to like you or not. That's not your responsibility whether she likes you or not. That's her responsibility. Right. So, yeah. So it's been an hour. Damn. I was on here venting. But yeah, that's what I had on my chest. I had to be vulnerable about certain things and get it off my chest, which is a form of therapy. Thank you for you guys who came in and you clicked a like and you said something in the chat. This is Kiss Shorty Gaming Nation. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the share. Tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell the world, tell the people who you know. A new king is here. This is Kiss Shorty Gaming Nation, and I'm out.